Welcome, audience members, to the Master Your Money Show, where we're looking at how to build your entrepreneurial and financial mindset so you can make more money and accelerate your business. And really beneficial guest here today. We've got Meryl Johnston on, and Meryl is just a money expert, not only in business but also in personal finance as well. So Meryl actually runs a company she founded called Bean Ninjas, which is all about helping people in business with their bookkeeping and accounting as well. But I know that she just goes beyond just the typical kind of normal numbers service that you might get with a bookkeeper. And she's got a real focus on educating business owners and helping them really get in control of their finances, both in business. And I know that totally translates over to personal finances as well. And she also runs the Bean Ninjas podcast. So thank you, Meryl, for joining us today. So glad you could join us on the show.
Yeah, it's great to be here and chatting about one of my favorite topics.
That's so good. And that's what we're all about on the Master Your Money Show. So look, I'd really love for you to dive into how things came about for you there. I know Bean Ninjas is obviously not the first thing you started into, but please share us a little bit about with your journey.
Yeah, sure. So I was always interested in business, and I actually had my first business when I was back at university and ran a tennis coaching business. It was the only skill that I had to sell. And I studied accounting, and the reason for that was that I always knew that I wanted to run a business, but I'd heard that learning accounting skills was really a great way to get insight into a broad range of different businesses. So I actually worked in the accounting industry for about 10 years and then made that first transition into my own business with a consulting business, which had the boring name of MCJ Consulting. And I was doing accounting systems implementations and actually a range of other projects, and really had some challenges in scaling that consulting business model. And so Bean Ninjas was built on the back of those frustrations and looking at what kind of business I actually wanted to run. And so the criteria I was looking at were I wanted to have a business that had global potential, and bookkeeping does that because it's not so much related to taxes, and the underlying bookkeeping is done in a very similar way around the world. I wanted it to be process-based so that I could build a team, and I wanted to have recurring revenue, so people on subscriptions rather than doing projects. And bookkeeping, the fact that it needs to happen regularly, also lent itself to that business model. So that's where the concept of Bean Ninjas came from. We followed Dan Norris's 7-day startup method, and we launched the business in 7 days. So we created a logo, built a website, and came up with 3 fixed-fee bookkeeping packages, and found our first customer in that first week, and then kind of grew the business from there. And so we've got a team of 15 now, which are spread around 6 different countries around the world.
Wow. And that was 2015, was it, when you started Bean Ninjas?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So we're a little over 4 years old now.
Wow. Yeah, congratulations. That's a huge achievement.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, I really like, obviously taking bookkeeping is something that every business needs as well. But yet you've really, sounds like from the foundation, from the starting point, you've had that really clear vision around what you needed to do with the business and growing it, but obviously in the skills you've learnt to do the financial side as well. Yeah. Was there any kind of mentors before Dan Norris, or how did you kind of get started in that course leading up to it?
So it was partly Dan. So I'd actually read his book, and we were working out of the same co-working space. And so he was challenging me around the consulting business model and saying you should do WP Curve for accounting. And so that was one of the areas. I also listened to the Tropical MBA podcast, and they'd been talking about productized services. And someone had actually thrown out on that podcast, and they were just coming up with all these different ideas of productized service business models, and accounting and bookkeeping was one of the ideas listed there. So that's where the idea came from. I read a lot of books and listen to a lot of podcasts. So some of my influences aren't necessarily direct mentors of mine, but I try and take different things from different people. So the book Traction by Gino Wickman has been really helpful for me in scaling the business and putting in place systems, but also metrics. And just he has what he calls the entrepreneur's operating system, which is a really nice framework to grow a business, especially if you haven't grown one or systemized one before. And I like the work of Jim Collins from Good to Great. There's a whole lot of Built to Sell is one of my favorite podcasts, and that gives insights into what it's like to sell a business. And I think that's really important to think about from day one, even if you're not planning to exit for a long time, but to be aware of where the value is in your business and be optimizing for that as you grow, rather than run a business for 10 years and then think, oh, I want to sell. Oh, I haven't optimized anything, and you're not going to get a great valuation.
Yeah. That's so important. Actually, I had a previous guest on the show, actually, Callum Lang, who said, you got to step out of your business and look at it as if you're investing. What does your business look like? So, yeah, that's great. So many different resources that are coming together.
I actually wanted to touch on that comment. That's something that I talk about and think about a lot as well. So if I just am reflecting on my own business, Bingages is an investment in my investment portfolio. And that's the way that I think other business owners should be thinking about their business. And you actually have two hats. And it sounds like you've got a whole episode on this already, but there's your role as the CEO or the founder, and that's something you're getting paid a wage for that role. And then you've got a completely different role, which is the investor. And you might be the 100% owner of the business, or you may have other people that own a stake. And you should be looking at that investment, and then how does your investment in this business stack up against your portfolio? So maybe you've got shares, maybe you're invested in other businesses. And so it's quite a different light to be looking at the business. And I think it's important to really separate those two, because if you don't separate it, how do you actually evaluate your investment in, or how your business is actually going as an investment?
Yeah, that's fantastic. I love that, separating it out into those two different roles. And business owners to use that method to really step outside of being caught in the day-to-day and start to see it in that light.
Yeah.
And now, going back to the accountancy side of things, how did you first get into that? What was your kind of step into doing that before the tennis coaching side of things?
I guess I had good marks in accounting at high school, and then a lot of it was just that I wanted to get into business, and it seemed like accounting was a great way to do that. And then I started in accounting and audit, and again, that was all optimizing for learning, not because I loved working in audit, but you get exposure to a lot of companies, and you're, as a graduate with 1 year experience, you're talking with CFOs of big companies and really getting insights into how they're running their finance team. And you're getting to see the finances of how these companies are running, where they're making money. And so for me, that was really interesting, but also, it's just foundational knowledge if you want to be a business owner. And there's lots of avenues that you can come to running a business. But for me, coming at it from that finance and accounting perspective, that was the direction that I took. But all of it was with the goal in mind that I wanted to run a business, but businesses.
Yeah, fantastic. That's great. We've heard a lot about your business journey as well through that. One question I've been asking a lot of the guests on the show is to think back to when they were a kid. Often it's something to do with their family, their parents. But do you have a memory of your first money experience?
Yes, I do. I remember getting a Dolomites bank account, and I would have been in maybe prep or grade 1. And I think I used to get $1 a week pocket money. Yeah. And I was always a saver. So I saved that dollar every single week. And I can remember after a term that we went shopping at somewhere like Target, and I was able to buy some lollies, some hankies for my dad. That was a thing back then.
Yeah. It's a good Father's Day gift.
And a little something for my brother. So I remember that being one of my first experiences, and how it felt to actually have saved up for so many weeks in a row and not spent that money. And I think that's, maybe I grew up in a family of savers, but that's really translated to my attitude to money the whole way through, around saving and trying to build something bigger rather than just spending money as it comes in.
Yeah. That's interesting you say, because I had the very same experience. Dolomite account. I think it was grade 1. Yeah, I remember putting the money in. I think it was $1. I think it was $1 every week or so. And I think having that experience, kind of subconsciously you start to see it. You see the power of saving and putting something little away down the track.
Yeah,
get to see the results of that. That's great. Yeah.
Well, I've got a baby daughter now. She's only 5 months old, but I can't wait till she's a little bit older and we can set up an account like that, and I can
Yeah.
teach her some of the things that my parents taught me.
Yeah. That's fantastic. Yeah. No, I really like that. That's a really positive story around there. Was there any kind of negative experiences you had around money that made you want to change things for yourself in the future? Or was it kind of building on that first story?
Um, not really, not really negative. It was probably more positive. So
Mm.
I was always interested in money, and not because I wanted to buy things. I was just interested in it itself. So I remember having garage sales, and I wanted to do the wheeling and dealing. Again, I probably was only 8 and trying to sell things to people coming in. And then my dad was interested in share investing and was a business owner himself. So I remember learning about
Okay.
shares and buying my first shares when I was about 12. So
Yeah.
I can't really think of any negative. I mean, maybe there were negative experiences. Can't think of any off the top of my head. I think I was lucky that my parents were strong with their financial management, and they were really interested in talking about business and money at the dinner table. And so I learnt a lot about that just from conversations and things that they were doing. And the fact that my dad wanted to pass things like share investing and his knowledge around that onto us.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. And how did that kind of experience in personal finances translate then into how you help people with their own businesses, and then how you're running your own business and finances as well?
I think because I'd been a saver, it did mean that when I came to set up my business, I was able to take some more risks because I had more than 12 months of living costs saved up. So it meant that it didn't put me under pressure to make bad business decisions because I had a financial buffer. In terms of the way that we work with the Beaninges clients, I'm not a financial advisor, so I don't provide any investment advice to our clients. But that doesn't mean that we can't talk about things like paying yourself as a business owner. And so part of what we're about at Beaninges is trying to help our clients create financial freedom through successful businesses.
Mm.
And some of that is around optimizing the numbers within their business. So making sure they're tracking the right things and then trying to improve things like profit margins. Some of that is how they're paying themselves so that they're actually pulling money out of the business and then building wealth outside of the business. And so we have some frameworks around that, and we run a financial literacy course, which we encourage our clients to go through, which has things like how do you figure out how much to pay yourself, and the kind of conversations that you might have with an accountant, or in terms of how do you optimize for tax, or conversations to have with a financial advisor if you're looking at your investment portfolio. So we're not providing advice on all these areas, but we're educating our clients to be aware that business is a great vehicle to build personal wealth, but there's some other areas that you need to consider too. And that you want to start thinking about those things from day one of the business, even if you can't pay yourself a lot at the beginning, so that you're again, building the right structures and frameworks so that when the business is spinning off more cash flow, you're in a good position and you've got the right foundations to take advantage of that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. And what would be your kind of first piece of advice or first key thing business owners who may be in that startup frame are in? What would you say they need to do first?
We've got a framework that we teach in just the financial foundations that really help to take stress away from running your numbers. So the first step is getting in place a cloud accounting system. We specialize in Xero, but there's some other good tools out there like QuickBooks Online. And as soon as you've got a system in place that connects with bank account information, and it can connect with other systems too, if you're selling on something like Shopify, you're starting to leverage technology so you don't have to do as much data entry.
Yeah.
So we recommend a cloud accounting system like Xero and a receipt management tool. And that can be as simple as Dropbox or Google Drive, or it can be a tool like HubDoc or Receipt Bank that actually connect to Xero. You might not need that if you're just starting out, but have the tool and then have a system around that. So every week, make sure that you're saving. And it sounds really frustrating and annoying, and a lot of business owners don't do this well when it comes to receipt management. And it's not the most interesting topic, but just have a system in place and follow it, and then you don't have to worry about it when it does come to the end of the financial year. So if you've got those things in place, then The next is separation of business and personal bank accounts.
Mm-hmm.
So not using the business bank account as a slush fund for holidays or nice dinners. Keep those things completely separate. Connect the business bank account to zero, and then pay yourself a regular wage. And in the beginning stages, that might not be much, but just pay yourself something, even if it's small, so that you can start to manage your personal finances rather than having everything mixed in together.
Yeah. Yeah.
The third component of this framework is around the chart of accounts, and I recommend that everyone understands what that term means. And a chart of accounts is basically the list of accounts in your accounting software. So you might have a couple of different sales categories. You might have software subscriptions, wages. There's a range of different accounts. So actually take the time to customize that for your business and then know what goes into these categories. And the reason that's important is because you want to have consistent coding so that when you're looking at your numbers, you can actually use it to make decisions. So if I had been using Active Campaign and 1 month it got coded to software and another month it got coded to subscriptions, I might see a spike up in subscriptions. But really, I haven't had an increase in that expense category. It's just a coding error. I haven't been consistent.
Yeah.
And so you can't start to look for anomalies and things that you need to change or fix until you've got your chart of accounts accurate and coding consistently.
Yeah.
So there's 2 other steps in the framework that I'll quickly run through.
Yeah.
The next is having a bookkeeping timetable. And again, it sounds kind of boring, bookkeeping timetable, but I recommend listing out all of the tasks that relate to bookkeeping, and that might be paying bills on a fortnightly basis. It might be reconciling daily or every 2 days. It might be looking at reports once a month. And we actually have a template for that can be adapted.
Mm-hmm.
But it's really helpful to know who needs to do what by when it comes to your accounting and bookkeeping, and then have that mapped out, but they actually have it in the calendar as well. Because too often I see reports are sent by the bookkeeper to the business owner and they don't have time blocked out in their calendar to look at them, and they just receive the email, maybe open it, look at it for 10 seconds, shut it, never look at it again. And really, there's not a lot of value in those financial reports if you're not blocking out the time to look at it.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'd say that's one of the benefits. The other is just batching tasks. With small businesses, I see business owners paying bills as they come in, and really you should be batching tasks like that, and then just every 2 weeks or once a week actually looking at all of the bills and then deciding what you're going to pay so you can better manage cash flow. And there's actually a number of bookkeeping and accounting tasks that I think should be batched, and then you can see that in that bookkeeping template, the bookkeeping timetable template.
Yeah.
And then the 5th and final step is financial reports, which we kind of touched on, but really the idea of doing accounting is not just for tax time. It's not just for compliance. You should be interested as a business owner about where you're making money, where you're spending money, and what's happening every month. And so I recommend looking at as a minimum, looking at a balance sheet and a profit and loss every month. Mm-hmm. And for bigger businesses, looking at a cash flow forecast. But if you're not even looking at a profit and loss and balance sheet every month, then don't worry about the cash flow forecast until you've got that sorted out. But every month, looking at those reports. And the first review, I recommend looking at the numbers critically. So do these actually look right? If you paid a whole lot for web design, then you'd be expecting to see that in the accounts. So actually look at it critically and ask questions about whether these numbers look right. And then the second review is to then look at, okay, well, what percentage did I spend on marketing this month as a percentage of revenue?
Yeah.
Is that in line with what I was hoping? Do I need to make any tweaks or changes in the business? So the first cut is critically assess those numbers. And then once they're updated and you're happy that they're right, then start to use those numbers to optimize it and make decisions in your business.
Yeah. That's great. There's so much practical strategy in there. Is that contained in your guide, or I know you've got some resources there on Bean Ninjas for it?
So that particular framework isn't, but we run a 5-day free zero challenge. So it's a challenge, and we teach that framework as part of that challenge. Okay. There's a video. We do that quarterly. So the next one's coming up at the end of September, the 5-day challenge, and that's me explaining these concepts in a bit more detail with videos. And then we've got a workbook with a whole lot of tasks to help you actually set up that framework.
That's fantastic. Audience members, if you go to beanninjas.com, you'll be able to get the information around that. That's great. Yeah. Another question I've been asking my guests is I'd like to get people's experience and advice around the one thing that's made the biggest difference in their financial world, and also then in their entrepreneurial or their business focused world, and maybe how those two connect as well. So if you can think of that, the biggest thing that's had an impact, we'd love to know about that.
I'd say the book, The Barefoot Investor. And that might sound a bit strange because I already came from a background of fairly strong financial management, but my partner didn't come from that background. And so I had to, when we joined our finances together before we had a child, then I really didn't want to be running the finances for the family without her input. And so that was something that we needed to sit down together. And I wanted to actually have her on board with understanding our money, and for us together to commit to what our savings and our investment goals were, as well as what we were going to spend money on. And so I needed a way to explain that wasn't just me saying this was how we should do it. And so we adapted a lot of what was in the Barefoot Investor to the way that we run our finances. And I hadn't actually done it like that previously. Yeah. I didn't maybe feel like I needed to, but it actually was a great framework. And so it's been really helpful for us to lay out. It forced us to have these conversations, but also it's meant that she's more involved as well. It's not me just running the finances and making decisions. I didn't want that in a relationship. So that's been really helpful for us to do that together. And then from a business point of view, it's hard to pick one because I read a lot of business books, but I think maybe it is Built to Sell, because that forces you, and that was maybe one of the first times that I started to think of my business as something separate to me and my job. And that mindset actually creates a lot of other thoughts around how you're running your business, how you're building an asset, and the decisions that I've been making around that.
Yeah, that's I know Built to Sell is like one of those books that so many entrepreneurs just say, yeah, you've got to read this one just to get you in that right framework and thinking around how you're doing business, whether you're starting out or you're halfway along the journey or further down the track too. And certainly Barefoot Investor for personal finance management, so important too. And I thought that was really interesting that you dove into the fact that it's actually a resource that helps you start that money conversation around with your partner or family or other kind of key people in your life there, so that like we'll have our own kind of set way of dealing with money too. It's when we're kind of bringing other people into it, we have to start to tweak things or maybe educate others or learn what other people's backgrounds are. If we haven't had that conversation first, you just never know, do you? You're kind of walking through it in ignorance.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think it's healthy in a relationship to have one person saying, no, we can't do this holiday because we're trying to save for this. You want to have that as a collaboration where not one person's just controlling the money. But you're right, you come from different backgrounds. And so it's actually quite hard, it can be, to articulate the way that you manage money.
That's it. And it's sometimes not the easiest thing to actually talk about as well. It's taking that time to have a conversation in a setting that's not too confrontational, and there's not blaming there or a shouting match or fighting match happening too. But I know there's plenty of stuff in the Barefoot Investor around having that time or setting up that regular time to have that chat as well. Yeah. Now I know you have. I know you've put together, and you mentioned Xero as your preferred way of doing bookkeeping in business. I know you put together a Xero toolkit for our audience members that can get free access to that. Tell us a little bit more about that.
So we've created a number of downloadable resources that we think will be really helpful in your Xero journey, but also in just creating strong financial foundations. So I mentioned the bookkeeping timetable template. So that's one of the resources, and you can download that and then adapt that for your business. There's also a cash flow forecast template. And I haven't spoken a lot about cash flow forecasts. I'll give just a really brief overview. The balance sheet and profit and loss, which I did mention when we were talking about financial reports, are looking backwards at what has happened. And that is useful for decision making, but they don't actually project what you're expecting to happen.
Yeah.
Cash flow forecast helps you to look into the future and think about what cash inflows and outflows are going to be happening. And that helps you to make decisions about where you allocate your money. So we have a template. It's quite simple, but it really helps to communicate the concept of how a cash flow forecast works. And then again, you can adapt that for your business. And then we also have a checklist in there of common zero mistakes. So that's something that you can cross-check against your zero file to see if maybe you've got some tweaks that you need to make just to make sure that your zero file is really well set up.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I actually use cash flow forecasting software for my personal finance money coaching as well, because there's just something that the visual representation when you can see into the future what's going to happen, to be able to see that just helps you really make educated decisions around things. So that sounds like a fantastic resource there for the business side of things. Audience members, we're going to put the links to those in the show notes as well. You can jump onto beanninjas.com and get hold of those other resources too, as well as the podcast. Are there any other resources there that people in our audience here that you think would be really beneficial for them?
I think the toolkit is the best way to start. And there's an option to jump on our mailing list if you download that. And that's where we share information about things like the 5-day challenge. And again, that's a free challenge. And we've had really good feedback on that. I think because there's some accountability there that you're going through this challenge with a group of other people and you can see what kind of questions everyone else is asking and learn from them, as well as the Bean Ninjas team. And that leads into a 6-week financial literacy course. And that's a lot more in depth. So we do a deeper dive on some of the topics that we've talked about. And then we also cover a lot more related to financial reporting and digging into how you analyze your numbers. So for anyone that's wanting to do a bit more of a deeper dive on these topics, then we have a financial literacy course and we run that quarterly, and the next one's kicking off in October. And that's a 6-week program with online videos, templates to download, as well as small group coaching calls each week with a group of about 8 other business owners.
Yeah, great. Yeah, look, that's such incredible value there for people of all different stages of their business there too. So yeah, I just want to thank you. Thanks, Meryl, for sharing that with us, with our audience.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thank you for being on the show and just sharing your journey and experience too. So beanninjas.com, we'll put the link in the show notes for your audience members. Now, we've got more interviews coming up as well, so make sure you stay tuned there. Make sure you keep in the loop. We'll let you know what other speakers we're having on the show, but we're just diving into depth in all these different key areas too, and each speaker, each expert is sharing something for free on their little area too as well. So thank you again, Meryl, for being a part of it and sharing everything around our bookkeeping there and financial education in our business. That's been fantastic.
Yeah, it's been fun. Thanks.
Thank you. Audience members, have a great day. We'll see you soon. Bye, Meryl.
Bye.